Well, I just got home from the office, and breaking news out of Berea. Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns have traded Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills as part of a pick swap. Here are the full details of the acquisition. Buffalo gets Amari Cooper and a 6th-round pick in 2025. Cleveland gets a 3rd-round pick in 2025 and a 7th-round pick in 2026. Let me read that one more time. The Cleveland Browns have traded Amari Cooper and a 6th-round pick in the upcoming 2025 draft to the Buffalo Bills for a 3rd-round pick in the upcoming draft and a 7th-round pick in 2026. Amari Cooper, who has had his fair share of ups and downs, many more downs than ups this season, is now heading to Buffalo to play with Josh Allen, which means the Browns are in, at least for now, sell mode, and Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy have to develop that immediate connection to replace whatever Deshaun and Amari Cooper had, because there is no security blanket. It is now Jeudy. It is now Tillman, Darden, Prochet, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, Elijah Moore. Those are the guys who are going to be asked to handle the majority of the receiving load for the Cleveland Browns on offense. Amari Cooper has had a bad season for his standards on the year through 6 games in which he has played all 6 games. He has 24 catches for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. His 24 catches tied for 37th in football, his 250 yards, 53rd in football, his 2 touchdowns, tied for 31st in football, also tied with Rodney McLeod, a safety on the team, and his 10.4 yard per reception average ranks 139th in football. What he does rank first in the league, by the way, is drops. So you now have negated the Browns' biggest weakness, at least in theory, which is your number 1 receiver leads the NFL in drops, and that is not a winning formula. Let's digest this for a second, because whatever, they trade Cooper. It signals a change of direction for the Browns, who entered this season with Super Bowl aspirations. And it shouldn't be a big surprise that the Browns are willing to unload and unpack the Amari Cooper deal, because they've laid the groundwork and sprinkled the breadcrumbs throughout the summer that would make us feel that this is certainly plausible. Amari wanted an extension this summer. They didn't give him an extension. They gave him an incentive bonus and guaranteed his salary, which was going to be guaranteed anyway, because you weren't going to cut Amari Cooper. He wanted a long-term deal. The Browns said, no, we're not going to give you any extra years on the deal. What we will do instead is we'll give you $5 million up front as an extra incentive bonus to play out your final year here with the Cleveland Browns. This was going to be his last season in Cleveland anyway. It got off to a subpar, some would say horrific start. And now the repercussions is he's headed to Buffalo to go play on a contender, which the Browns certainly are not. Also, throughout the offseason, the Browns made it evidently clear they wanted Brandon Ayuk. They wanted an upgrade at the wide receiver 1 position, and they were willing to include Amari Cooper in a proposed package for Brandon Ayuk. It was a package that the San Francisco 49ers reportedly agreed to. The only holdup on the deal was Brandon Ayuk didn't want to play in Cleveland, and he said, I'm not going to sign an extension in Cleveland, and if I'm not going to sign an extension in Cleveland, you can't trade me to the Browns. So they were back to square one. That led to the cryptic Amari Cooper Instagram post saying, LOL, I wouldn't mind it at all. And that was allegedly, and we can't say with 100% certainty, but you can connect the dots and say that was directly tied back to the Browns reporting that they were including Amari Cooper in those deals. So Amari's time in Cleveland had worn thin. His play on the field certainly looked like a player who didn't want to be here. Once again, this is a guy who, for the majority of his career, had been one of the more reliable pass catchers in football, and through 6 games, he had 10 drops, which led the NFL. He looked uninspired. Him and Deshaun couldn't get on the same page. There was the choice route in Sunday's game against Philadelphia where Deshaun thought Amari was going to do one thing, and Amari did something very different, and they can never get on the same page. And whether that's a new offensive scheme that Deshaun's not comfortable with or Amari's not comfortable with, you could look at it 100 different ways. The reality was those two were not clicking, and a Browns team, which is at 1-5 and essentially eliminated from playoff contention, is certainly going to be willing to listen to trade calls from other teams around the league, because if you're going to lose a guy this offseason, you might as well try and recoup some value for him. And frankly, turning a 6th-round pick into a 3rd-round pick for Amari Cooper, a guy who wouldn't be on this team next year regardless, actually feels like a halfway decent return on a player who's of his age, skill, and production throughout the season. I'm not saying it's a home run grand slam win for the Cleveland Browns and Andrew Berry here. And it certainly indicates the Browns are kind of waving the white flag on this season and maybe not attempting to fully reach their potential, what we thought they could be. I mean, my guy Earl, who I love, and I picked them to be the playoff team. Earl said they were going to the AFC Championship. Right now, they have the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So we both could not have been more wrong in that preseason assessment. But the Browns are now kind of saying, hey, we understand what we have. We understand what we're doing. Let's see what we can get back. Let's see what we can recoup and help rebuild with in the future. So getting a 3rd-round pick, and it's worth noting, and this is very important, Andrew Berry's track record in the 3rd round has been very hit or miss. He's found guys like MJ Emerson. He's also drafted guys like Anthony Schwartz. So there's no guarantee the 3rd-round pick will turn into a valuable asset, but at least it gives you some more ammunition if you want to try and maneuver your way up or down the draft, trade up for a package. Let's say you combine a 2nd and a 3rd to move up higher into the 2nd round, or trade 2/3 for a 2nd, whatever. It gives him more ammunition to help rebuild this roster in whatever facet he chooses, assuming he's still here to make those draft decisions. Because if the first 6 weeks of the season are any indication, I don't think anyone on this Browns team, player or coach, is necessarily safe right now. I think everyone is playing, coaching, evaluating for their jobs, and we could see some holistic changes to the entire organization, top to bottom, outside of the owner, for the 2025 football season. But to recap, the Browns essentially trade Amari and a 6th for a 3rd-round pick to the Buffalo Bills. Amari could be a perfect complement in the Bills' offense alongside Shakir and James Cook and Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman. He's a veteran presence, by far, at least on paper, the most talented and skilled of the receivers in their room. And that's a team that, with Josh Allen at quarterback, can certainly compete with some of the better teams in football. I know they got boat raced by Baltimore a few weeks ago on national TV, but that's a team that you would expect to compete and is certainly in a better position to reach the playoffs and compete for a Super Bowl than the Cleveland Browns currently are. And now he has a chance to go chase a ring. And Amari, good for you. You had a successful 2 seasons here in Cleveland. And I say 2 because I'm not giving you the half or the quarter you played this year. That was not successful. I believe, if my memory is correct, he's the first Browns receiver to have 1,000+ yards in back-to-back seasons since maybe forever. So, it wasn't a failure. It certainly wasn't an abject failure acquiring him for a 5th-round pick. And Andrew Berry traded a 5th-round pick for Amari Cooper and got a 3rd-round pick back for Amari Cooper. So you got the better asset in the first deal, and then you improved upon his value in the later deal. So I'll give Andrew Berry a round of applause for that particular maneuver. He certainly does not get the same round of applause for some of the other draft picks and trades and signings and et cetera he's made elsewhere. But on this particular one, I do think it is a good move for the Browns. Because they gave him his upfront salary and they guaranteed that contract earlier on, the Bills essentially are going to pay him less than $1 million the rest of the season, which feels like an absolute bargain for the Bills in terms of acquiring a veteran player that can help you compete for a Super Bowl. For the Browns, I don't want to say the rebuild officially begins today, but this is certainly a step in the right direction, or a nudge towards that particular instance and that particular route than what we have seen the last few months and years from the Cleveland Browns. So to recap once again, the Browns have traded Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills for a 3rd-round pick, Amari and a 6th for a 3rd and a 7th in the upcoming draft. We'll see what Andrew Berry does with it. We'll see how it all pans out in the long run, but the Browns may be waving the white flag. And if you're waving the white flag, does that mean it's DTR time? Are you going to wave the white flag and let Deshaun play it out? We'll see what happens. They have the Cincinnati Bengals at home this week. Nick Chubb is expected to play. And while we can see Nick Chubb on the field, we will not see Amari Cooper. Leave us a comment whether you like the trade for the Browns, whether you hate the trade for the Browns. And let's give Andrew Berry a grade. How would you grade Andrew Berry on the full cycle and the full circle of the Amari Cooper experiment? You traded for him, gave a 5th-round pick for Dallas to acquire him, and then you trade him to Buffalo 2.5 seasons later, get a 3rd-round pick in return. Let us know. We'll talk about this more in depth on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show tomorrow, and we will see you guys then. Appreciate you tuning into this little 10-minute breaking news stream. The Browns and Amari Cooper have parted ways. Will he be the last veteran to get traded before the trade deadline? Andrew Berry, the pressure's on. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.